Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about human rights and government policy. Okay, good morning everyone. It is June 1st here in British Columbia, and we have the Minister of Finance, Carole James. She is going to give us a statement and answer some questions about how British Columbia is going to move forward as they reopen business and commerce after several shutdowns and reopenings of business here in British Columbia. I will tell you this, that I have noticed in the neighborhood in which we are based that there have been hair salons opening up, and that there have been some dentist offices opening up, as well as the essentials of grocery stores, things like that. It seems that we are moving forward with reopening of commerce, and I think that we still have a long way to go, and a lot of business still need a lot of assistance to move forward, but it's happening. So let's listen to what Carole James has to say as she discusses COVID-19 BC Action Plan update for today, June 1st.
Good morning and welcome. I want to begin by recognizing that I'm speaking today at the BC Legislature on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt. Thank you all of you for joining today's live stream. As you know, many BC businesses are eager to ramp up now that we're in the restart phase, and they're keen to get going now and throughout the summer. But we also know that many businesses have suffered serious losses as a result of COVID-19 and during this state of emergency. I want to express my appreciation to businesses for keeping people safe, and I also want to let businesses know that their government is here to support them with emergency relief measures and support them as our economy carefully and safely reopens. What I'm announcing today is about both emergency relief and putting small businesses in the best position we can for them to come back and participate in the restart. Last week, the federal government opened applications for the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. It's a federally designed and delivered program that offers forgivable loans to commercial landlords who have tenants who've lost significant income during the pandemic, at least 70%. The launch of the federal program has been a welcome step for British Columbia. And I want to again express my appreciation to the many landlords who've stepped up to the plate, who've already applied for the federal program. In doing so, they're supporting their tenants and their livelihoods. And they're also benefiting our communities because those small businesses have assistance to be able to continue to operate. We're hearing so many positive stories. But we've also heard from some small businesses that they need us to help them to fill a gap that has left them unable to get the support that they need. There are landlords who have not applied for the relief, and unless the landlord applies with the federal program, the program isn't available to small business tenants. So we're listening to small businesses, and we're taking action to strengthen the federal commercial rent program. I'm announcing today that if a business is eligible for the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program, but their landlord has not applied for that support, they are going to be protected from evictions under a new Emergency Program Act order. Preventing landlords who are eligible for the program from evicting tenants can encourage landlords to be able to apply for the program, which will then give some relief to businesses who've been hardest hit by the pandemic. This is for situations, again, where eligible landlords choose not to apply for the federal program. Their tenants are going to be protected from any evictions that are due to unpaid rent payments. This order restricts lease terminations, rent repayment lawsuits, and the repossession of small businesses' goods and property. This emergency order will be in place while the federal program is in place, so that currently goes until the end of June. If there's an expansion of the federal program, we will look at expansion of the order. This fills a gap in the federal program and is the latest step in our COVID-19 action plan. Aligning with the federal criteria, the eviction restrictions apply to businesses that have lost at least 70% of their revenue. Now, I recognize there are many more businesses that have closed or struggled through the pandemic. One single program isn't going to fit the variety of needs the businesses are facing. The federal program has other business supports and programs in place, and the province also introduced a variety of tax cuts, delays, and deferrals for businesses. That includes an average 25% reduction in property taxes, deferred tax payments for the employer's health tax, the PST, the hotel tax, the carbon tax, and several others until the end of September. So our response to support people and businesses in British Columbia is going to continue to evolve as the pandemic evolves and as we move into this restart and recovery stage. Dr. Bonnie Henry, Health Minister Adrian Dix, and Premier Horgan have been very clear. A phased approach is the best approach for people, businesses, and communities. It's also what we need to do to effectively restart our economy for the long term and build confidence for businesses in our province. I know we're all eager to see our province open up again. We're eager to rebuild, and I look forward to working together with the sectors to regrow BC's strong economy in the months ahead. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. As a reminder to everybody on the line, please press star 1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question, but if you queue up again and time permits, we will get back to you for a follow-up. Please also unmute your phones. You will not be audible until I call your name. First question this morning is from Vaughn Palmer, Vancouver Sun.
Good day, Minister. You've also got the Legislature Committee on next year's budget starting its hearings today, and I see you've put out a budget consultation picture. Can you, I'm trying to sort out, based on what's been done so far, we have the $5 billion voted by the legislature for this year, and in that is the $1.5 billion recovery plan that my understanding is the government hasn't started spending that yet. And then you're looking ahead to next year's budget. So can you kind of reconcile all of that, say where the restart plan fits into it, and where next year's budget fits into it? And if I realize that's kind of a conditional question, but it strikes me that on a day when we're looking at next year's budget, there's an awful lot we still don't know about this year's budget.
Question, Vaughn. I think you've identified that well, how there's still so many unknowns. We're now just moving into the restart. All of this still fits, the restart and the recovery, the $1.5 billion, all still fit within the $5 billion that was allocated in the legislature. So that's still within those dollars. But I think it's important to recognize as we go through the restart and into recovery that we will have to look at all of the deferrals that we've put in place and the other programs and services. Many of them have deadlines. We'll need to look at those deadlines. We will have a full update as we do our first quarterly. I think it's important to remember that we're still only 2 months. I know it feels like forever to everybody out there, but we in fact are only 2 months into the fiscal year, April and May. So there's still a lot of data that has to be collected. We need to see how the restart program is going and how people are opening up and whether they're rehiring before we look at additional additional programs and supports that may be needed. So the budget consultation for next year's budget will continue on. We kick that off today, and all of those budget presentations will be done online. Usually they're done often in person and online. They're going to be done online this time around. And it really is an opportunity for people because that will be a recovery budget. It will be moving out of our restart and into recovery. And so it's important to give the public an opportunity to say what their priorities are. What areas do they want us to take a look at for the upcoming budget? And so that'll be the process for the budget consultation. And then first quarterly report will give us an indication of where we are financially and fiscally in the province in the first quarter.
Tanya Fletcher, CBC.
Oh, hi, Minister. I'm just wondering, for today's announcement, how many businesses do you expect will benefit from this eviction protection, and even anecdotally, like what you're hearing, how big of a deal this is? And you mentioned it's until the end of the month. So, is there an opportunity to extend past that, or is this just planned to be a 1 month thing?
So I'll start with the last question first. This is planned to be in place as long as the federal program is in place. So currently the federal program is 1 month, goes to the end of June. But again, if the federal program is extended, this order allows us to extend it to the federal program. So we'll be watching that one as we go along. Numbers-wise, again, there's not a lot of data around how many businesses have applied yet. It's only been a week. But I have to say, certainly we've been hearing that a number of landlords have applied on behalf of their tenants, and that's obviously the best direction, as we want that relationship to be built. We know there are other businesses that actually have agreements with their tenants around rent deferral, so some of those are in place already. But I have to say it's been an issue that has been raised by members on the Economic Task Force, the Premier's Economic Task Force. We've heard it from small businesses and from MLAs around the province that there are certainly some tenants who their landlords have been very clear that they don't want to bother, they don't want to take the time to apply for the federal program. And that then hurts the tenant, because the tenant doesn't have the opportunity to be able to have that relief to help them then be there through the restart and get their business going again. And so I expect that it will, I hope, make a difference in encouraging those landlords to apply now that they won't be able to evict those tenants. So we'll be watching those numbers as we go along.
Next question is from Moira Witten, the Tyee.
Hi, good afternoon, Minister. Thanks for the announcement. My question is about a program or an announcement you made a couple of weeks ago regarding a wage boost for essential workers in the province. There's been a number of groups coming forward because they're not included in this program, including peer support, harm reduction workers, pharmacy staff, home share caregivers, and grocery store employees. Is the province considering filling these gaps in the federal program to pay workers with funding of its own?
Well, as I said, very similar to this program, one program isn't going to fit all of the needs out there, and we certainly are aware that there are many, many workers who have provided incredible support over this last number of months. But we had to, in the limits of the program, take a look at how it was possible to implement the program. So it does include not-for-profits, many not-for-profits in this, as well as employees in the healthcare system, in the justice system, and in the community social services sector. So it won't be possible to cover off everyone, and we're certainly including in the private sector encouragement for businesses to provide support for low-wage workers through that route as well. But let's remember, again, the minimum wage went up, so we are putting supports in place for lowest paid workers in other ways and other supports. Come July, we will have an increase in the climate action support that will be coming to low and modest income families. That comes automatically. People won't need to apply for it. So that's another additional support that the province is putting in place for individuals and families, again, who are low and modest income. So we're trying to make sure that we fill the gaps in a variety of programs in a variety of different ways.
Next question is from Angela Jones, CTV.
Hi, Minister. On that note about minimum wage going up, many small businesses are saying that this is coming at a time when they simply can't afford it, even though this increase has been happening every year. They simply didn't predict a pandemic. So what is your response to those small businesses that wanted to see this delayed?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is that, in fact, the increases in the minimum wage were planned in an approach so that we could make sure that they were phased in, and it worked for businesses as well as for minimum wage workers. I think people in this province would agree, and I think the pandemic has shown this, how important it is to make sure that the lowest paid workers see an increase and see the support that's there. We won't have a strong economy in British Columbia if the lowest paid workers continue to struggle and continue to not be able to participate in the economy in British Columbia. So I think, in fact, it's a positive direction, and we've tried to make sure that we provided support to small businesses in a variety of ways. We've given a reduction on school tax portion of property tax, which for businesses who have triple net leases means a 25% reduction in those dollars as well. So we're making sure that we're trying to put the support in a variety of ways. But I think, again, people will recognize that a strong economy has to include everyone in British Columbia, and that includes our lowest paid workers who will now get a little bit more support to be able to do the good work that they've done, not only during the pandemic, but always to keep the economy going in our province.
Dirk Meisner, Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. Would you describe or say this move that you've done today for landlords is probably the strongest interventionist move you've done since the start of COVID? You're basically giving landlords a nudge to do what some of them may not be wanting to do.
Say encouragement, Dirk, is what we're doing through this order. We're certainly putting the encouragement on businesses that haven't applied because of the pressure that small businesses are facing. We all know that small businesses are a large part of our economy here in British Columbia. We need them to be able to restart and to be able to help us recover the economy in British Columbia. It won't happen without small businesses. And so to make this move, which will encourage that support, I think is certainly the right thing to do. I would also say for landlords, that to have a reliable tenant who is there in your business, who you have a relationship with, is a benefit for the landlord as well, because they know that they will get the rent every month. They know that the business is building back strong. So I think it's actually a benefit for everyone, and certainly, most importantly, the community who needs those small businesses to get back up and running.
Richard Zisman, Global News.
Minister James, has there been any thought of extending, we were speaking earlier about the programs, Vaughn asked about that, about extending the rent program? I understand that today, June 1st, is the last month that tenants will be eligible. Is there any thought in extending that?
We'll be looking at all our programs, Richard, over the next week or so. There are a number of programs that end June 30th. There are a number of programs that end September 30th. So we'll be doing a full review, taking a look at the restart, seeing what's going on. Certainly our first pressure point, or our first area that we want to put our focus in, is getting people back to work, is getting the economy restarted, is providing opportunities for people to go back to work in a safe and careful and planned way. So that's our first priority, but we recognize that we need to review those programs and see whether the needs are still there.
Next question is from Lisa Houston, News 1130.
I'm just wondering if, for people like those in gig economies, I know like here in the symphony here in Victoria has halted, leaving, those musicians, and there's artists, and there's all kinds of people who are in more gig type economies that won't be starting back up because people won't be back in theaters. Is there any more help coming for those people who are earning far less than they normally would with the $2,000 CERB?
Well, I know there's a lot of discussion at the federal level around the CERB and how long the CERB will go on and the support that's there. I also know in a number of those sectors, I've heard some of those discussions going on in the arts and culture community, for example, of doing online concerts where people will pay a ticket price and be able to get a link to be able to see a concert or a play. And so I know there's some creative discussions going on there. And I certainly know that our government, through the minister and others, is engaging with those sectors to look at what kinds of things would support them as we look at economic recovery. So those discussions are ongoing. I think, again, similar to small businesses, we all know that the life of a community often relies on the arts and culture industry in our communities. And so we're, again, looking as we move into recovery, what kinds of supports can be in place in that sector as well.
Next question is from Rob Shaw, Vancouver Sun.
Well, hi, Minister. When you talk to some businesses, especially small businesses, you often hear the refrain that the deferrals that they're getting on their rent and on taxes are helpful now, but eventually they're going to come due in full, and there's this fear that a massive kind of lump sum of bills are going to be on the horizon at a time when business isn't looking great for the foreseeable future. What would you say to those businesses out there that appreciate, especially the provincial government's deferral of a lot of taxes, but it still is due at some point, and they're not sure how they're going to pay it?
Well, in fact, I've been having exactly those conversations with a number of businesses through the economic task force that the Premier has in place as well. And again, we will be reviewing all of those deferrals. People have suggested things like payment plans. Maybe there are payment plans where a payment is made over a number of months. But again, I think the restart is going to be key. We're going to watch the restart over this month to take a look at what kind of economic activity we're seeing, what kinds of businesses are able to get back up and running. But there are a number of options that we can look at on the table, and a number of good suggestions that are coming forward, because we recognize that we need businesses to continue the restart program, and we don't want to cause something that's going to cause difficulties there.
Colton Davies, Radio NL.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. You said when you gave the April job numbers that you were hoping May might look a little bit better, and knowing we're expecting that in the coming days, within the next week, I suppose. Any input into whether we can expect job numbers for May to be any less grim than they were in April? And just one side question as well. With the $1,000 emergency worker benefits, on May 8th, you said more than 400,000 applications had been processed, so more than $400 million worth. Do you have an updated figure on that program as well? Thank you.
Thank you. And I didn't get my numbers for this morning. I know we're over 500,000 at this point for the $1,000, but I can get you specific for today's numbers on that piece. I'd be happy to do that. And then on businesses and the work that businesses are doing and looking ahead, I think the employment numbers, will continue to be tough. As I've said, April and May, the numbers that we received in April didn't have the full impact because they're always a month behind. So I think our numbers we will get in the next little while, the next week, will be very tough again. I think you won't start seeing the restart numbers until we start looking at our July and our August data. That's why it's important for us to put those numbers together as we look at a first quarterly report in the fall. So I think they're going to continue to be very tough numbers. They're always a month behind, and we didn't really start the restart process until a week and a bit ago. And so I don't think you'll see a shift. And again, let's remember when we look at those numbers, there are a number of industries and a number of individuals when it comes to age in particular that have really been hard hit. You're seeing youth impacted in those job numbers. You're seeing the hospitality industries, the retail sector really hit. And so I think that'll need to be part of our discussion as we move in to recovery as well.
Those are all the questions we have for today. Thank you.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.